now time for Rex Brandstatter Senior Talk, brought to you by the Solon American Legion.
Good afternoon. Hi, this is Rex Brandstatter, and thank you so much for Solar American Legion for sponsoring, help us sponsor here. And tip of my hat and a salute to all the legions in Johnson County. You know, it might not be in Johnson County, but the West Branch Legion, and of course, then we've got the Coralville American Legion, the Iowa City American Legion, the Oxford American Legion, North Liberty American Legion, Solon, I probably said that twice. So the Lone Tree American Legion, those are just full of veterans and all the auxiliary people who work there. So my salute to you, men and women who are members of the American Legion, and thank you so much for your service. Well, listen, folks, today it's what are we going to say about today? The sun's out. That's about the best thing we could say is the sun's out. At least keeps our dauber up a little bit. But I have to tell you that the last couple of days it's been so weird, funky weather here. Anyhow, it's so nice. We're going to take it. This is sort of reality, what it's supposed to be, and we're spoiled rotten is what it is. But why wouldn't we be after all that yesterday? My, what a change yesterday. I went for a big walk yesterday, and it was so nice. It ended up being 77 degrees, and last night it was really, really rocking here late in the afternoon. A big front really came through here, so it is what it is. We'll take it. We're going to be back in the 50s tomorrow, so this is like we're still above normal, so we'll take it. What are we going to do anyhow? This is Senior Talk. I'm so glad you've taken time out of your busy day. Sit back and relax and take a few minutes and see if we can't cook something up in the weekly radio program where I'm going to try to try to put together some great senior information that could be of interest to you or your friends or somebody in your coffee group or maybe somebody in your family or somebody at your church group or your card group or car collector group, whatever that might be. Maybe something here will help you, one of you, come up with some ideas that really could be to your advantage. Well, I'll do my very best to bring you some fun recollections of past people, places, things, and events, and see if we can't all sit back and remember some of those things. So, grab yourself a sandwich and a nice cold root beer, and let's see what we can cook up. My name is Rex Brandstatter. I'm 74 years old, and I think that we seniors have a lot on our minds, and we are going to talk about it. I've been a licensed Iowa real estate broker here in Iowa, working in Iowa City and Coralville, Johnson County, mostly since 1974, helping all kinds of people sell and buy homes and investment properties and commercial properties, and I can certainly help you if you want to give me a call sometime. I will tell you that I work mostly with seniors. I work with a lot of estates. I work with trust accounts at banks, or trust departments at banks, attorneys, CPAs who refer people to me, mostly seniors. So that's the story. Feel free to give me a call. I work with executives of estates. I work with administrators of estates. I work with attorneys when they call and say we have an estate, but Mr. Smith, who passed away, has nobody then I help with the real estate. That's what I do. So please feel free to give me a call on my senior line, which is 319-330-5534, 330-5534. Speaking of cell phone, I had a little issue over there, or at least just yesterday, started telling me my phone had been hacked and all kinds of warnings and don't do this and don't do that and call this. So I just loaded up and went to the old Verizon telephone store this morning on the Coralville Strip, and some nice young lady helped me. Of course, I don't know anything about it. And if I'm 74, she had to be 22, if that. And she fixed that thing. She said, I could take care of that. In about a minute and a half, she fixed it. I didn't ask her what she did because I wouldn't know the difference. Isn't that the truth? I mean, she just bang did this. I saw her running the pages, and good God, good for her. Thank you so much for her, and it was my pleasure. So I'll go back there for sure. Well, I want to take this special time here. Today is February 28th, which means tomorrow, for once, in the blue moon, we're going to call it there. It's February 29th is tomorrow. So I wanted to just take a second to wish anybody who has a birthday, actually on the 29th, tomorrow is your day. I'd like to say maybe happy birthday, and maybe that comes from all kinds of people who are listening who kind of always, I don't know if I feel bad. It's just kind of a unique situation that your day doesn't come around, type of thing. So, and that somebody told me today that a leap year only happens on the years that are divisible by 4. I don't know that. Could be. I never worked that out. But lots and lots of people who were born on February 29th, they don't have a birthday very often. So tomorrow is your special day. So grab yourself a little cake and have at it, and happy birthday from the rest of us. And if you're listening today and that's your birthday, well, I say tomorrow's your birthday. I say happy birthday to you. Must have been hard as a kid, I suppose, when you're like 4 or 5 or 3 or 4, and then maybe up to your 16 or 17 not having a birthday, and you celebrate it on the 28th, I assume. So that's just the nature of the beast. So happy birthday to you. For sure. And someone earlier today was mentioning here on the radio station something about dilly-dally. Don't be dilly-dallying around. And I was wondering this. See what you folks think. When I was a kid, I used to watch Howdy Doody all the time. I'm a member of the Peanut Gallery, of course, proud member of the Peanut Gallery. And there was a guy on there named Flubba-Dub. And people like, but one of them was a marionette named Dilly-Dally. And Dilly-Dally was a young boy, had kind of big ears and kind of a blonde hair, and he never got anything done. And he was always going to do this, you're going to do that. And they used to say, he just don't be dilly-dallying around. And my dad used to say, don't dilly-dally, go get that yard mowed type of thing. So I'm wondering if when we use the term dilly-dally, if that is from the Howdy Doody show where Dilly-Dally, the young marionette, was on there. I'll bet you $1 it is. That's kind of cool if we picked up something from Howdy Doody show. Folks, what is Senior Talk for if you can't talk Howdy Doody? Well, it's so cold out there that, boy, I had the winter coat on this morning. I'm telling you, I had the winter coat on with the hood, and I don't blame you. I see people walking down the street this morning with the winter coats on, and it's darn cold out. To 50s tomorrow, go figure. We're going to have to do what it is. So it's still February for sure. Well, a good taste of spring we had, and it's so nice, and I certainly like it. So, when it was so nice, I went ahead and jumped the gun, and I went ahead and pulled 2 cars out of the garage, and I swept the garage out and did all kinds of a little thinning, not the major thinning that I'll do once it warms up, and I can get the hose out and do the wash down the floor, and take some things out. And in Corville, and I think in the first part of May, in the first part of May we have a mayor's cleanup where you can put things to the curb. And I don't know that I've accumulated stuff, but it just seems like the garage is just so clunky and junky and stuff like that. And so they yesterday afforded me a good opportunity to do that. Now, it afforded me an opportunity also to see one of our lights that we turn on at night on the outside. One of them is out. And I took the old stepladder out there, and if I want to stand on the top rung, I can change it. Folks, don't do that. I'm not going to do that. I voted not to do that because sure as you know what would happen, and my biggest fear in life would be to get up there and do that. When I was 30 years ago, I probably might not even have done it. Come to crashing down, breaks up and hurt something, end up in the hospital, or worse yet, So if you don't feel comfortable, don't do it as a senior. Just don't do it. It's not that important. So we'll see what happens in the garage there. But it just felt so good. It even feels nicer. And all I really did was sweep it out and kind of reposition the stuff. So if you didn't do that way, get yourself ready, because that's what I want you to do pretty soon. Well, to the nice lady who had a lot of others who called and asked me about does Medicare, I get calls all the time, does Medicare cover this? Or does Medicare cover that? Or how do I get in touch with Medicare? Well, will my sister be able to keep a retirement if she has Medicare? What? A lot of things I don't know the answer to on Medicare, but I do know the answer to this. Every year when you get your new Medicare card, it comes with a little Medicare information catalog. So I keep that catalog. We get 2, one for my wife, one for me, and we both have this catalog, and we keep that catalog. As a matter of fact, we have a rule at our house, we read it. So when we get that Medicare catalog, which I bet you $1 you can't even put your hands on it, I bet you $1. Right now you can't put your hands on your Medicare brochure, we'll call it. They came with it because it answers lots and lots of these questions. So I tell this lady, I said, well, why don't you read your Medicare catalog? What? So she didn't know anything about it. She can't find it. So I said, well, the next thing you can do is you can go online and you could Google the stuff you're after. And you can ask the internet, what about this or what about that? And most likely they might refer you to that, or they might refer you to the Medicare Information Center. In that catalog, if you have it, it answers a ton of questions. It really, really does. So recently a friend, an acquaintance, a really good acquaintance, was having some care at the University Hospital, and they were I don't mean the word selling or pandering, but they were advertising or was trying to put a sales job. This certain shot would increase the bone density. And so, actually, this was my wife, as a matter of fact. That's an acquaintance, I'd say. And so I said, well, this is up to you. I'm staying out of it. It's your deal. You broke your bones, so you this was in August or September. You figure this out. That's up to you. I'm going to make that decision. And the shot cost $6,000 or $7,000. And I said, well, okay, we have the money. But I said, let's get out that catalog. So we did get out the catalog. And the catalog does cover that. So it wasn't entirely based on that, and that wasn't the real reason, but we did happen to use that catalog to look some things up, and lo and behold, Medicare does cover that. So that helped her make a decision. She did get that, and she is doing quite well, thank you. So much so Medicare sends you the card, and they send you the catalog. Don't throw it away, keep it, for God's sake. Wow, why not? A senior lady just advised that she had her eye doctor schedule a cataract surgery for her, and the first open date is May the 5th or the 6th. So this is the end of February, so it was April. So actually, she was talking about that. I said, it's only a little like 5 weeks away. And she was thinking that was way down the line. Well, it was the first week in May, and that's probably pretty standard. That might even be quicker than a lot of people can get in. So she just thought that was terrible, and I said, well, you're not the only one, not the only senior that probably has cataracts and needs surgery. So she was kind of taken back by that when they said, well, do you want May, I think it was May 3rd or 5th or 6th or 7th. They gave her 3 choices, and the other choice was 8 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, things like that. So she took the old 800 hours there to get that done so she can get home. So isn't that an interesting story? So the eye doctor said that you'll be working with a surgeon, and he, in this case it's a he, is booked. That was the first available date. And I don't know how many doctors do that here in town. It's out by Highlander somewhere. And that's what's going around. And the cataracts come mostly for seniors, mostly for older people when their eyesight vision starts getting cloudy. So they have their hands full. That means that doctor's probably getting referrals from, I don't know, I'm just going to guess, Tipton and, the Lone Tree and all over eastern Iowa, Mount Vernon, who knows? I don't really know, but that's the story. So lots and lots of people go do that just based on age alone. Well, a senior man tells me, my senior brother and his wife bought a retirement home in Iowa from the owner on a contract. He now has to pay the property taxes. His brother has to pay the property taxes. Is that part of the deal? I said, well, yes, it is. He said, yeah, he was not really thinking so. Well, you could set a contract up any way you want, but if your brother bought it on the contract, he's paying the seller on the contract, meaning that there's no bank involved. He's making his payments right to the seller. So I'm going to guess, this is only a guess, if the seller did not have a mortgage, because if you have a mortgage, you cannot sell for the most, you have to get the approval of the bank. For most times they won't allow it because they have what's called a due on sale clause, which came up in about 1986 when people was defrauding the savings and loans in the banks. So if you want to sell your house on a contract, you have to have your approval of your bank, which you probably won't get. But if you own your home outright with no mortgage, you can sell it on a contract, take a down payment, and then take monthly payments. But the taxes will go on. They don't care. The county treasurer doesn't care how you sold it or if you sold it. They want their money. And so here's this man buying on contract. Well, who do you think is going to pay the taxes? You're living there. Who do you think is responsible for the taxes? You are. Now, you could set this up so that when you make your payment, the payment goes to the seller, but I caution you on that. I would say to you, if you bought a home on contract, I would say to you that you should make strict provisions to pay the taxes yourself. Well, Rex, why would you do that? Because hypothetically now, but I know this has happened, I can tell you cases where the people make the payment, and after about 6 months or so, the man collecting the paper didn't make the tax payment. So now they get sold at a tax sale. So now somebody else they will end up owning the property, and this guy who bought it on contract will be what we call OUT, out. So make sure that if you're buying on a contract, whoever you bought it from is paying the property taxes. There's some great case law. There's some great scenarios around town whereby not only that, but the people who bought it on contract bought it. The seller did not have permission from the bank, and the bank foreclosed and took it back. And this man who put maybe $10,000 or $20,000 down, depending on the contract, was OUT. So there are some pitfalls. The number one rule on this, remember, the number one rule on any real estate contract, any state real estate transaction, number one in Iowa, it has to be in writing. And number two, I highly suggest with a contract, you have to have an attorney to look out for you too, because the contract has to be put together on what they call the Iowa deed for contract, or it's called the Iowa short form, is the one they use mostly. And that there's lots and lots of things to adjust, and one of them is the taxes. Lots of things you could do, and I hope this man did that. But anyhow, his beef was he didn't think he should pay the taxes, and I'm saying he's wrong. He needs to pay the taxes. So that's the story there. All right, we are hoping that our two nice mature ash trees come back this spring. They look great. Come back. No, I said, well, what's wrong with them? Well, the lady said at the top of them, last year they started looking a little, in the summer they started looking a little naked up there, stuff like that. And I said, well, I have news for you. You have ash borer problems right now. The emerald ash borer is infested your trees right now. That's where it all starts. They start usually at the top, at the end of the limbs. I said, your tree is toast. I said, I'm not an arborist. I'm not a tree guy, but I'm just telling you that your trees are going to come back, but they're going to get more naked by the week this summer. So they're not happy about that. You can look around. There was just a big story on the TV last night about the town of Ely, between here and Cedar Rapids, is taking out all the ash trees because, folks, Coral's doing it. Iowa City's doing it. They can't head this ash borer off. They've tried everything. It's kind of like the old, remember the Dutch elm we had when I was in high school? I'm telling you, Iowa City had beautiful. So lots of cities in Midwest did beautiful ash trees, and they're all gone with that stupid Dutch elm. Same thing with the ash trees. So, ma'am, I know they look great, but they're not going to come back. They may come back for part of the summer, but I'll bet you another $1. Boy, I'm just handing out money today. I'll bet you another $1 by the end of the summer, or less, your ash trees will be, again, toast, like the word. A lady called me and she said this. She said, Rex, we like to work in the yard. She called me on Sunday, as a matter of fact. We like to work in the yard. She and her husband says, we can't do it in one day like we used to, but it's enjoyable to us. And then she said, what do you think about working in the yard? I said, well, it's great exercise, things like that. I said, I'd be very hesitant to start raking yet and removing all the leaves from around your flower beds and things like that. Well, why? It's going to be in the 70s on Monday and Tuesday, which it would. And I really didn't know the weather forecast. I said, well, because it's too early. And if you expose what's underneath there and then it turns cold, like it did today, for gosh sake, but I didn't know it, you really run the risk of damaging your tulips and your plants and their little softy guys that are coming up early. So I wouldn't do it. I said, I'd clean up the yard, or maybe you've got sticks in the yard, or you got some old papers blowing around, or whatever it might be. I would certainly do that. But I said, I just sort of caution you about doing that. And I think in this case, unfortunately, for that lady, I think I was right. And yesterday I did see some other people out raking and going to it. And none of my business, of course, and I don't care, but it is too early, folks. It's not quite there yet. Now, this next week, starting tomorrow, it's supposed to be warm. If you look at the weather forecast, just do your homework on that because your yard, your grass is very tender. It's very squeamish right now. So be careful. So, how about this one? We have 2 CDs coming up for renewal on March 1st. We got a letter from the bank. We have until March the 10th, in other words, 10 days to respond, or they will renew it at 3.5%, which is less than what we're getting now. What are the ranges these days? Well, that's a good opportunity for you to call the bank and go visit and see what they're doing. It's exactly what I'm going to recommend. Instead of, say, looking online at their rates, I would consider go down to your bank and ask to see customer service, man or lady, and sit down and say, hey, I've got 2 CDs. I'm going to pick something up. 2 CDs coming due. I'm going to pick one out. It's at 10,000. One's at 15,000. Well, should you combine them? I don't know. A lot of people like to have separate ones, so they come due at a separate time. These apparently are coming due right about the same time, or maybe the same time. I think it's worth a trip to the bank to talk to them if that's your credit union, wherever you may have them, because a couple things I'm trying to do here. Number one, I'm trying to get you to visit a quote, and I don't mean they're financial advisors because they're not. They're safekeeping people of your funds. But if you've got money in CDs, that's a little stodgy. I have money in CDs. It's pretty stodgy. You put it in there, you don't do anything. But they're coming due. Maybe you have some needs coming up. Maybe you don't want to renew them. Maybe you want to say not put it in there for 24 months or 12 months or 16 months, whatever programs they have. Maybe you want to put it into a money market account. You could learn some things by going there and just having a visit. It's a free visit. They don't charge you for that. You could sit down and walk out of there, and they'll certainly give you the CD rates. They'll do that, and they'll be happy to lock that thing up for as long as they can. But maybe that's not good for you, and only you know what's good for you. But by talking to them, you might learn a couple of things that might even be better than what you had in the past. Maybe it's the things haven't changed. Maybe it's a couple 3-year CDs coming due, and when you did that, why you didn't need, no way you would ever need the 15 or the 10. Well, maybe you got some things coming down the road that you might. Maybe you don't want to lock it up that long. Okay, so the longer you lock it up, the more interest you get, but that's the rule. We all know that. So I think, I don't know I didn't give her any advice to whether to lock it up or not, or buy the CDs. I advise her to go talk to the bank. And I think that's valid on my part, because I don't know her financial situation, nor do I need to know. I didn't know my business. Go make a trip down there, and I think you'd have a good experience. I tell you this next one, but I had... I can't read my own writing. I developed a kind of a writing skill in college where I got a speed writing thing, and I took abbreviations, created my own language. I'll tell you, folks, about 6 months ago, I was going through some things in my office at home, and I found a spiral notebook, and it was some class I had at the university, and it was a spiral notebook with 30 or 40 pages worth of notes and different days and dates and things like that I used to keep. And I, honest to God, couldn't read it. I had no clue. It might as well have been the Navajo Indian wind talkers. Of course, I noticed the doodles, and stuff like that. But honest to gosh, I just couldn't figure that out. So that's what I'm doing here today. I had a call from a friend of mine. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he seemed kind of down in the dumps, kind of shaking his head. And I said, "What's the scoop?" He said, "Oh, it's my son." He says, and he's in his mid-30s, and he said to me, he says, "Have you ever seen the movie Failure to Launch?" And I said, "As a matter of fact, I did. Terry Bradshaw was in it." Well, in the world with kids and society, failure to launch is when you have a child who was outgrown being a child and is an adult, and failure to launch means kind of like never got out of the gate. Never came out of the chute, never got out of the blocks type of thing. And he said he's living at home now. He says no job, he had no income, college graduate. And he says, and here's what he said, "What the hell are we going to do?" And I said, "Well, I don't have any kids, so I said, I got to kind of stay out of this one, except let me turn this into a business for you. I'm going to turn it into a business, and you tell me, then you should be able to answer your own questions." I said, "Are you running a hotel here?" "Well, no, we're not." I said, "Well, yes, you are. You're running a hotel, and this one, your overnight guest, is your son, and apparently he's a long-term guest." "Well, yeah." I said, "Okay, so now he's going to come down and eat at the mess hall, which would be your kitchen table." "Well, yeah." "And I'm assuming he's that the caretaker, your wife, we're going to call her at this point, is going to do the laundry." "Well, yeah." I said, "He's staying there for free." Well, yeah, okay. I said, "So if you're running a business, how many people are you going to let in the door do that, even if it wasn't your son?" "Well, nobody." Then I said, "Well, this is your son is the only difference. And since they didn't have any kids, it's your son, so it's your call, entirely your call. But I can see you're frustrated with that right now." "Well, I am." He said, "This is no way to run a railroad. There's no reason for that." He said he is not contributing anything like that. I said, he's not in college. He's not 16 or 18. You know, even that would be bad enough. He says, no, he's in his 30s. So I said, how's your blood pressure right now? He said, it just went up about 4,000%. So I said, well, it's your call, your business. I said, but you're running the business, you're running the hotel, and you got to guess it won't pay. So I think he kind of got a kick out of that, hearing it extrapolate over something like that. So I have a cousin of mine who's in kind of rough shape. 4 or 5 years ago, he had a hip replacement here in Iowa. Had a hip replacement surgery, and as so many of you folks have done. And then over the years, he's been in, he's developed sort of a limp to the one side, and the docs look at it, things like that, and they've come up with a plan, an idea that he had a problem. And he had a problem in more ways than one. The device that they put in there, I think it's probably the ball and socket. I don't know which one, but one or the other. Maybe they replaced both. I don't know. This thing was, the appliance they put in it was deteriorating. And it was shaling, what they call shaling off and letting off some things into his bloodstream. And he's having bloodstream issues, which was going to cause him rather large real issues with his blood, which then creates all kinds of problems if they didn't correct it. And he's a doctor himself, and he went, what? So he's a veterinarian. So he couldn't believe that, so he got another opinion, and they gave him the same opinion. So he said, what am I supposed to do? And they said, we want to go back in and put a new appliance in and redo that. So he just had the second hip surgery today. He had it last Friday. He just had the second hip surgery on the same hip. And he said they took a big giant, he got a big giant scar 8 or 10 inches long and sutured on his, I'm going to say it on the radio, on his butt, his right butt cheek. I said, well, now wait a minute, it's your hip. He goes, well, don't ask me why. He said, I haven't had a consultation with the doc yet. So I sent him a text this morning, and I said, you know, when I was a kid, my dad would tell my brother and I, we had something like that, stubbed our toe or what, so walk it off. So I sent, he's a real close cousin, so I sent him a text, and I said, walk that thing off, walk around. You know what my dad would say, walk it off. And so he said, if I could walk, I would. So he's in a lot of pain, and he said, this is really going south, but he says, I've got the surgery behind me since Friday, and today's Wednesday. On Monday, he went to PT, and they said, yeah, you're kind of coming around, but you can't sit on your fanny, which he says I can't do anyhow because it's too sore. So he is 70 years old, just turned 70 years old, and going through all this. So I wish him the best of luck on this, and get well for sure. But that's not an easy road, folks. He had the surgery once, which was bad enough, and now he's had to go back for the same thing. I said, tell me it wasn't the same doctor. And there was silence. I said, it is the same doctor. He goes, yeah, it is the same doctor. I said, well, what are you thinking? He says, well, it wasn't the doctor, it was what they used. And he says, I looked it up, and he says, all kinds of class action lawsuits going against doctors and hospitals and manufacturer on this thing. He said, well, nobody knew it at the time. So he's going to give that doctor a pass. I guess what am I supposed to say? Same thing, I guess. Well, wow, what a deal that is. That's just amazing that now he had to go through that, and of course he still works, but he's pretty much retired. But he's right now. Doctor said absolutely nothing for 90 days. Nothing for 90 days. Stay home and exercise. Do your exercise as you can. And he says if you're exercising and it hurts, he says that's good. So there you go. Well, I want to talk to you about an article that was in the paper the other day from a friend of mine, and Dick Hakes. Dick Hakes is a friend of mine. Met Dick 5 or 6 years ago. Did a story about, I don't know, it wasn't about me, I don't think, some project I'm working on or something. And Dick he's a retired, lives here in town. He's a newspaper man by trade. And I don't have his whole background, but he owned a newspaper up in north central Iowa somewhere, maybe up around Forest City area. Maybe it was Forest City. I don't remember all this group. But he retired. His wife retired. They moved down here to Iowa City for the low property taxes. Well, that's kind of a sense of humor you have to have if you retired to Johnson County. Well, he wrote this article, and if you saw this, I'm going to kind of do some gerrymandering of this thing, and I told him I was going to do it, and he said, party on type of thing. And the name of his article was, and he's 75 years old, by the way. He's right in the old ballpark, folks. The article was laugh and keep on keeping, even when things might be slip sliding away. Now, I want you to remember the term slip sliding away because that might do that. So this is my friend Dick Hakes. He said, a few days ago, I woke to an astounding thing. Some 75-year-old guy was staring back at me from the bathroom mirror. Well, I'm 74, folks, and 74 and 3/4, so I see this guy every morning myself. And about a month ago, I was standing there, and my wife was coming around the corner and said, look, come here, look at this. She says, what? I said, I look like an old man. I said, I got these two lines on my face just like my grandpa did. And I said, he was an old man when I was a kid. He was probably in his 50s, you know. Well, he was, for sure. And she said, oh, shut up. And she walked away, but I stood there and looked. So that's just what Dick did. He looked in the mirror and saw a 75-year-old man. He said, this is Dick says, wow, he said, wow, I said to myself, just wow. He said, honestly, I never expected to make it this far anyhow. So, but the genes are ruling, and my mom and dad and two brothers died in their 60s. So he said, this wasn't good, which means I've been on bonus time for quite a while. Well, I don't know if there's really a way to figure that out. I did that one day and figured out I'm already older than my dad. So maybe I'm in the same boat here with Dick, and I'm going to. The way I didn't want to know that was, oh, God, maybe God's going to take me this afternoon, which he could if he needs me, I guess. So it's just kind of a tough deal. So I guess all in all, I'm sure Dick is trying to say he's standing looking at an old man, but he's glad he has the opportunity to do that. So he says bonus time is okay. There's still time. But how in the thunderbolt of Zeus, which would mean clean that up, how in the hell did this happen? Wasn't I still that high school kid in a leather jacket who snickered at the crotchety old farmers on the spit and whittle bench in downtown and cringed when an elderly relative grabbed my elbow for yet another mega boring story from the Great Depression? Folks, we've been there. Another mega boring story from the Great Depression. Rex, we didn't have anything. Dad, how come you got all this stuff? How come you're saving those Rex? We didn't have anything in the 30s. You kids don't know what it's like not to have anything. Well, we'd find a potato somewhere and we'd a meal for five. So that's what he's saying here. He says he just remembers seeing making fun of all the old people when he was a kid. Well, now he's that old man. He said, now I'm them. That is so vividly apparent when I see my grandkids' eyes glaze over in the midst of one of my treasured stories about growing up in small-town Iowa. So now he's saying his grandkids roll their eyes when he starts telling, well, in 1954, a candy bar cost a nickel, but it was 4 times as big as one you get now for $1.69. His grandkids have heard it, like your grandkids have heard it, like I heard it, like we heard it. He's hitting the nail on the head right here. That is so vividly apparent when I see my grandkids' eyes glaze over in the midst of one of my treasured stories about growing up in small-town Iowa. Stories about how we used to crawl out underneath the front porch on hot summer nights and lay on our backs and stare at the stars and look for Sputnik. And, of course, Sputnik was the first Russian rocket that went up, delivered in the late 1950s. We did the same thing at scout camp. We'd lay out there, even in the front yard at home, and try to see that something. And we'd see something shooting across the sky. We were half scared that something was up there, and pretty neat deal. So, or how about delivering the Des Moines Tribune, which was the afternoon paper, on my bike every day after school? It taught me how to manage money and deal with people, the good ones and the nasty tightwads as well. Remember those guys on your paper route? Sure. Deliver that newspaper, the Press Citizen in my case, and then we'd have to go collect. And then you get some old coot guy who, but next week I don't have any change. And when I was collecting, folks, it was 35 cents a week. And I can certainly understand why you don't take the Press Citizen if you don't, just based on content. But for the price of it, I think it's over $1 a day or some crazy thing. That's fascinating stuff, right? He said. Well, why would any young kid want to sneak a glance at TikTok on the phone in their lap during a nice family 75th birthday dinner when Grandpa is literally chock full of such enlightenment? Yes, we've touched on what could be the great tragedy of being 75. You have all these huge buckets of life-enhancing advice and storage carefully accumulated over 3/4 of a century. And nobody wants to hear them except the dog. Oh God, our dog don't. But I told my dog, I reasoned with my dog. That was the sad part. I used to reason with my dog. I think we should head to Dairy Queen, don't you? And yeah, the dog wants to go to Dairy Queen. You know, that's when you know you're in trouble when you're reasoning with your dog, and for some reason your dog agrees. Of course, all your dog cares about is a treat. He could care less if you're a commie or a serial killer. The dog doesn't care; just wants a treat. And yet at 75, a guy cannot complain, and that's the bottom and the base of the story, folks. At 75, you and I, and if you're listening today, we can complain if we want, but there's worse things that could happen. True, there are a few strange physical things going on these days. You might pick up little ailments that nobody has ever heard of and can barely spell, like thrombosis, the polymagdalii thematica. Treatable, nearly controllable things you can deal with thanks to modern medicine, but which puts you on the first name basis with your phlebotomist, which would be blood. And, of course, there's all the other normal old people stuff, like dealing with hearing aids, cataracts, titanium knees, and a multitude of discouraging age spots, skin tags, squamous cell sarcomas, and other unpleasantry which keep your dermatology buying name brand groceries instead of generic knockoff. So in other words, you're spending so much time and money at the doctor. My buddy Dick's buying Hy-Vee green beans, and the doctor is buying Del Monte because Dick and you and I are spending all our money, and the doctor getting it all. He pretty well got this figured out, didn't he? The harsh truth is that in your mid-70s, things, here you go, folks. Truth is that in your mid-70s, things just seem to be sliding away, as once foretold in song by our buddy Paul Simon. Slip sliding away. There you go. The next target down the road is 80, which is unlike the first 7 decades ending in a 0, seems to mark the point at which plain old becomes seriously old. And if you can make it to 80 and you're in halfway good shape, Mrs. Rex saying this, you're really running. You're really running it. So more power to you if you're listening today and you're above 75 and 80 for sure. So he says at age 75, I guess you just keep on keeping on, and isn't that the truth? Even though things are sliding away up here, he's talking about hearing aids and cataracts and titanium knees and all age spots and skin tags and squamous sarcomas and things like that. As things slip sliding away, at least we have the right and time to keep on keeping. The good news is I'm a lucky boy. I'm still upright most of the time. I can walk down to the pond and I can drive to go get coffee, can still write a mildly cohesive sentence and have not totally alienated my wife. Yet, he says. He's one of us, folks. You know, I should get Dick in here sometime and just talk about things. He's a great guy. He's a newspaper guy. You'll see his articles in the press. And he talks about sort of, I don't mean off the beat things, but he covers things like, if you listen to Bob and Tom show, the news we totally failed to remember to tell you about. That's what Dick's doing. So my hat is off to Dick Hakes in this article. And he says, and if you can still recognize and appreciate and hug those you love, including those eye-rolling adolescent grandkids around the dining room table with life, as your life remains, well, good for you, and go to it. And how about those little stinkers? Sometimes they laugh at me, and sometimes they laugh with me. So there you go. We're all still laughing, and that's what counts. And isn't that the truth? So I thank you so much to myself for reading that. I got a kick out of that every time I read it. If you'd like a copy of that, let me know. Send me an email at rex@rexrb.com, rex@rexrb.com. Send me an email, and I will scan it and send it back. I'm not going to bug you about anything I don't need in my life. I'm not going to call you every 2 weeks and get you to talk to me about selling real estate. That's not the way I operate. I don't need to do that. So I'm so glad you listened. We got a lot of things on our plate here locally. We've got this weather that's going to turn around. As seniors, we've got to make sure that we're doing all we can to keep active and don't let your guard down as a senior, just like Dick's talking about here. And on locally, you've got grandkids. You might be thinking about maybe some graduation things coming up. I just saw a picture this morning. A lady said, I can't believe my daughter, 2 twin daughters, are seniors in high school. It goes so fast. I hope you've all taken the time to spend some time with your grandkids or those you love for sure. So that's the story, ladies and gentlemen. We got a Hawkeye women's game tonight. It's on everybody's good time Peacock. I don't know where you go to watch it if you don't have it. I don't have it, and I don't care, but I'll keep up to it on my computer. If you want to go to Tiny's Tap somewhere and watch it, tonight would be the night to go. And I think Saturday Iowa men play again, and then the women play here Sunday. And the nasty old Ohio State comes to town in the do-or-die grudge match with Ohio State. So, a lot on our plate. There's a lot going on. The weather's going to get nicer, and really, folks, it's my pleasure to be here every week on Senior Talk. I have a lot of fun being here. I hope I bring something to each and every one of you might glean to use to your advantage. And if nothing else, I hope you keep your chin up and hope you come back next week and listen to Senior Talk. So, this is Rex Brandstatter saying thanks for listening. We'll